Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Let's Talk Immigration. I am here with Greg Zoeller, who is from Indiana, and he is the former Attorney General of Indiana. Greg, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's good to be with you.
So for our first question, I'd love you to just share a little bit about where you're from, some of your work history. What do you do now?
Well, I was born and raised in Indiana, so we call ourselves Hoosiers. So I grew up along the Ohio River in a town called New Albany. I went to Purdue University and then IU Law School. So born, raised, and educated in the Hoosier State. My first job out of law school was for a young senator who had just been elected in 1981, was Dan Quayle. So I served actually 10 years, starting in the Senate for since 82, and then I was with him when he was Vice President of the United States. So I served 10 years in Washington, let's say plenty in the federal government. And then I moved home. I was married and started a family, went back into government and had been the chief deputy attorney general before being elected. So I've had almost 25 years of public service in one form of the federal or state government. Still very involved. Currently, I'm the chairman of the World Trade Center of Indianapolis. A lot of international work, but mostly I work with people who come to Indiana, want to meet the governor, the mayors. I know a lot of the business leadership, so it's an opportunity to continue to serve even in the private sector.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for all of your public service. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the people, especially of Indiana, have appreciated it. Just for those who are not in the Midwest, could you tell us what is a Hoosier exactly? Maybe a bit of information.
Well, there's a long, that starts an argument in Indiana. So everybody's got their famous, their own stories, but Hoosier is, it's currently the name of the Indiana basketball team. But it's a, let's say, a term of endearment for people from Indiana. We call each other Hoosiers. So we're proud of the fact that we're somewhat of a Hoosier hospitality is kind of our theme, very welcoming people. And for the most part, it's an easy place to live and raise a family.
Well, as a neighboring Ohioan, I have felt a lot of hospitality when I've been in Indiana. So you guys live with your name.
Anytime, you're welcome.
So would you tell us, the name of this series is Let's Talk Immigration. When did you start thinking about immigration and what stories or ideas got you to that point?
Well, it probably comes from being raised a Catholic and maintain strong Catholic faith. And I think that welcoming of people and let's say the immigrant and the refugee really comes from a Christian heritage. And I've always thought of myself as someone who really espoused that kind of welcomeness. And then in the years I worked in government, I saw the strength that we really have in this country of being a country of immigrants, where people who choose to come, that choose to have a better life and look for opportunities for themselves and their families. So I think I've always really felt a kinship with immigrants. My own family shared stories of the German Catholics who came over from the Baden area of Germany in the Black Forest. We moved to the Hoosier National Forest, which is down in southern Indiana where I grew up. So a lot of heritage and history in my own family. Very proud of our immigrant roots. I did hear a few stories that we may not have been the most welcomed when the German Catholics came to this country. But I never lived through any of that, but I did hear some of the stories shared.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting you bring that up because a lot of our ancestors have stories of not always being welcome. And I think actually remembering that has been a part of our past is good to remember for the next generation.
Well, if you think about, World War I and World War II, Germany was the enemy, and having a German surname, Zeo umlaut, E-L-L-E-R, It was pretty clear. And remember, the Ku Klux Klan really was against the papists, the Catholics. So we had it from both sides of being German and Catholic. And I do think they tended to stay close together. A lot of the cities, have German names, German street signs. That my grandfather even spoke German. So I remember it as kind of a source of pride, though. He might have had history in his family where he knew personally that they weren't always welcome, which may have meant why they stayed close together.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in your time in public service, how have you seen immigration affect the state of Indiana? I know you mentioned obviously your own family's history, but how have you seen it in a broader way?
Well, I think people would be surprised how diverse our ethnic and our cultural communities are in Indiana. We go up to the Great Lakes next to Chicago, a lot of Polish and Slavic, now a lot of Hispanics. You go through some of the parts where we have religious sects. We have a lot of Amish and Mennonite. You go through different parts. We have strong cultures of the German Catholics along the river, where the forests are. But it's really a very diverse state, and people may not understand that. But all the years I worked for Senator Quayle, I traveled around the 92 counties, got to learn a lot about the cities and their culture, the history, the type of people. So I think I've had an education that's steeped in what makes people Hoosiers, and it's not always the same thing. So I've had a great respect for the multicultural and kind of dynamic groups that we have in Indiana that really make it a rich place from a cultural and I think from an economic standpoint.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that's such an incredible opportunity to be able to go to all of the towns and counties and explore and learn that and value that heritage because it's ongoing. A lot of folks don't get that.
It is. No, I always tell people that if you were born and raised and grew up in Indianapolis, you really don't know the state because Indianapolis really attracts people from around the country, and they may not be here for long. We have a kind of a transient community, but it's a big city. You get out into the country, and people have had, where I grew up, we were fifth generation. So it's a different diversity within different parts of the state. But I do think that Indiana as a whole is a fascinating place and very rich in the dynamics of our culture.
That's really beautiful. So Greg, you are a board member for the National Immigration Forum. What made you decide to get involved there?
Well, I think it started when I was Attorney General, and they were looking for the Bibles, badges, and business. And believe it or not, the Attorney General actually has a badge. I used to carry it around.
Not just the police chief. Nice.
Well, that's right. You work with law enforcement a lot and within the court system, but it is an officer. So you officer of the court and also of the law enforcement. So they have a badge, all the attorneys general. But I think it really bothered me when some of the things that I tried to develop within the Office of the Attorney General was to focus on people who were, let's say, at greater risk. So the populations that were preyed upon by scam artists and fraudsters. So you really look at the vulnerable populations. That could be elderly, it could be younger people, it could be people that are kind of removed from links of society, but it also included immigrants. So I got to kind of reach out to the immigrant community, and I realized that they just didn't trust me. They didn't trust government. They didn't trust law enforcement. They were somewhat reluctant. So you had to work hard to gain their trust. And a lot of it really came through connections through their churches. A lot of the Hispanics from Mexico and parts south were Catholics, so I had that in common. But the churches really helped me reach out to the immigrant community. But then I got to know some of the people who were looking to kind of push back against some of the problems of our immigration laws. So I got very involved, particularly when it came to, in those days, they called it the Gang of Eight. I think it was 2013, and we had a bill before the Senate. So I got very involved with that, and that's, I think, when I got mostly involved with the National Immigration Forum, and have been involved ever since, because I think it's probably, immigration is probably the biggest risk. Our broken immigration systems has the most risk to our country's future. So it threatens, you know, who we are as a country. I think it really threatens our economy. Up until the pandemic hit, Indiana had a huge problem with workforce. We just don't have enough people to continue and maintain and develop a stronger economy. We could use another 1 million people in Indiana. That was the number of jobs that we thought we either had that were open or could be brought here. So we really need an influx of immigration, and the problem with our immigration system and the laws that are just hopelessly broken are really risking the future of our country.
Mm. And what do you think, you know, I hear folks say that they know it's broken, but I often hear really different policy solution ideas, how to fix that. And some of them, you know, look like us closing down as a country. What do you think from your perspective, with 25 years in public service at a federal and a state level, what would healthy fixes to our system be, in your opinion?
I think I was supportive of the statute that passed the Senate when the Gang of Eight. And I think it's a healthy starting point. I'm a realist, having worked in the Senate, but I think the problems are such that, you know, I may have hopes of what I would like to see, and I can be optimistic about future. But I think currently, starting off with either the entire plan that was passed through the Senate or pieces of it that might get us started. But really in the future, we need to have a whole new system of immigration that recognizes what it does in terms of the benefits to our country, and really not just the economic side of the workforce, but who we are as a people. And I think I'm very hopeful that that'll be the future that we look forward to.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful. And what do you think would have us help have a more healing dialogue in this country about the subject of immigration? Can you see anything that can help us get there? Right now, our dialogue is pretty rough from a national level to family dinner tables. What are some suggestions you have for that?
Well, I think if you look, you know, over the last decade, you know, leaders have really been the ones who have raised fear and concern. So the fear of the immigrant, the fear of Mexicans who come here looking for a job. I mean, that was really done by the leaders. So I think, and they spoke to, let's say, the, I'd say something that's within our culture and within a lot of people. So we do have maybe a touch of xenophobia, clearly have some problems with bigotry in our country. So that's part of who we are as a people. And I think the leaders have really brought that out in an unfortunate way that's really kind of scary. But in each of us, I think we also have the better angels that Lincoln talked about. And I think it's going to take the leaders, not just in government, but maybe in our communities, our churches, our faith-based institutions. So it's going to take leadership that reaches to the better angels, that raises up that sense of care that we should have for each other from wherever people come, and recognizing the value of every human being as an asset and as something that enriches us all. So it's that kind of leadership that has brought fear they can also bring about the sense of value in immigration. And that's what we're missing. We need leaders to step up, willing to say things that currently in this day and age may not be welcomed. But it's something that I think can appeal to everybody, even the ones that you see that may not, let's say, appear to be the strongest advocates. If they know more, if they understand who people are as individuals, it breaks down some of that fear, which has really been an unfortunate part of it, at least the last 4 years, maybe longer.
That is a really helpful word. So leadership. And Greg, I'll just say, you know, from a neighboring state of Ohio, I've really appreciated your leadership on the subject of immigration and knowing more of your history, how you have led in that way. We need leaders like you in government as well as in our churches. And I just really appreciate your influence in Indiana, but also with the work of the National Immigration Forum.
All right, I'm proud to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I am with Greg Zoeller from Indiana in his long career in public service and as board member of the National Immigration Forum with our next Let's Talk Immigration.
Thanks for having me.